Hi everyone, this is my mom and she's going to be doing this video presentation with me. So my country is Guyana and I had her look at the website that I created for this country and she is just going to share her couple questions right now and I'm going to give an answer to them.
Okay, so number one, I just wanted to know what their education system was like.
So Guyana's education system is mainly based on trying to get people through primary education. So basically just an elementary education, like grade 1 through 6, just so that they can be able to have that groundwork of an education since they are so impoverished that they can't do much better than that. So with their primary education, they've actually been above 95% enrollment rate since 2000, which is really, really good for an underdeveloped country. So that's mostly what their education system is like. And then the few lucky ones are able to go to secondary education and possibly get a college degree, but not very many are able to do that.
So are there colleges available in Guyana then?
There are a few colleges available, but they're mostly in the main cities, so a lot of the children in the rural countries don't even have that option.
Okay, what, number two?
Yeah.
Number two, is their society a matriarchal society or a patriarchal society?
So this country is definitely a patriarchal society. However, in recent years, they've been doing better about their gender equality. So women actually represent almost 50% of the workforce. However, just like in our country, they get paid less than the men. And the family dynamic is still very patriarchal, very much the man gets the say, and yeah.
Okay. Third question. As the beginning, I read a little bit about how they're turning over their banks systems and that, and other entities over to foreigners trying to open up their country, find success. Are they finding success with that?
So the organizations that they are partnering with is the World Bank and the IMF, and basically these organizations give out loans to these countries so that they can try to create greater gross domestic product in their country by maybe, say they want to try growing crops of wheat, which wouldn't do very well in Guyana, but just say that they are trying to do that. They would provide the money for the seeds, but if the crop didn't do well, then they would still owe all of that money to the World Bank or the IMF. So it's kind of a twisted system sometimes because it's not always to the country's benefit. And so Guyana has gotten out of debt or gotten out of some of its debt from this, but it hasn't been super successful at getting out of debt through these organizations because they're partnering kind of with the wrong ones to become self-sufficient.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next I'm going to teach you about the 8 Millennium Development Goals, and our class has been mostly based on these goals and based on seeing how our country is doing with these goals. So the 8 Millennium Development Goals were created in the year 2000, I think, by the United Nations. And so there's 8 goals, obviously. They're 8 Millennium Development Goals. And each one outlines something that each kind of underdeveloped country really struggles with and something that we want to become equalized throughout the world. So just starting with the first one, the first goal is to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. So obviously that is a huge one, and it's probably the reason why it's number one, because if you think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the physical needs are at the base. So we kind of have to start there. So as I go along teaching you about these goals, I'll also tell you just how my country is doing with that. So Guyana has actually made pretty good progress towards eradicating extreme poverty and hunger. From 1993 to 2006, it dropped from 28.7% to 18.6% of the proportion of the population living in extreme poverty, which is pretty good for 13 years.
That's good.
Yeah, so they're doing pretty good with that. And also the overall unemployment rate fell from 11.7% to 10.7%, which is only 1% in the same amount of years, but that's still pretty good for an underdeveloped country.
Okay.
Yeah. So the second goal is achieve universal primary education. So obviously we also know as a society that has education and is becoming mostly dependent on education for jobs, we know that to be able to get ahead and to be able to become more successful, you definitely need an education. So for these underdeveloped countries, even a primary education is something that is really important to have. And like I said before, right now and since 2000, Guyana has been above 95% enrollment rate, which is really good for this kind of level of a developed country. So that's doing pretty good, which is awesome. So goal 3 is promote gender equality and empower women. So this one is kind of interesting because it's a theme like throughout developed countries, but also underdeveloped. I said that like switched, but like even our country still has gender inequality, like I mentioned before. Like women still get paid less for doing the same job with the same credentials. So we still need to work on this in our society. But Guyana has also made pretty good progress in this, and actually in gender equality in kind of primary and secondary education, the boys and girls are equally represented, which is awesome for this. And then the proportion of women employed in non-agricultural sectors has increased from 29% to 33% in 15 years, which is also pretty good. And then also women are becoming more represented in public life and in parliament, which is good, but can definitely still be improved because they're still only at 30.7%, which, I mean, our country still has problems with that as well, having female representation in government. So goal 4 is reduce child mortality. So a lot of underdeveloped countries have a big problem with this because they don't have the resources necessary to be able to do prenatal care for women or care for any type of unhealthy baby.
Yeah.
So Guyana has done better because it has met the target of reducing their mortality rate by 2/3 by 2015. So that is really awesome. Yeah. But I also researched this specifically for my website because it's something that really interests me. And the reason why they still have a like higher rate of child mortality is because a lot of women living in rural areas have no access to roads, and so like the obstetricians and midwives have no way of getting there. And they're so deep into like the jungle and the forest, that they can't get there. And so if there's any problem with mom or baby, they don't have a very good chance of surviving.
Okay.
Yeah. So that kind of leads me into the next goal, which is improve maternal health. So it has also made pretty good progress with this by reducing the maternal mortality rate by 3/4 by 2015, which is like in potential to meeting the Millennial Development Goal, which is pretty good for
at least they're on track.
Guyana. Yeah, at least they're on track. That's true. So one thing with this is access to reproductive health has increased. So the proportion of mothers to receive at least one session of prenatal care has increased from 92% to 97.2% in 2 years, which is pretty good. And that was pretty recently. So, yeah, we kind of already talked about maternal health a little bit.
What about in our country?
So in our country, maternal health is getting better. And actually, you know how a lot of women are turning to like home births or doing, more natural things, which is kind of funny because we're trying to get these countries to like be more sterile and be more careful about what they're doing, but we're kind of like trying to go back into that natural birth. And like me working at a hospital in the labor and delivery field, I can see like some of the dangers of going back into that because they don't have the expertise of an obstetrician or something like that, but it's also doable. So
right.
I guess here women definitely have more of a choice. So yeah. Okay, so goal 6 is combat HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. So this goal, we've actually had quite a bit of success with steady progress. So it's not completely there, but we're approaching it. And the government has become involved in combating it. So work has been done to like increase knowledge and awareness of the disease, which is really good for a country in the Caribbean because they actually like to suppress that because it actually affects their like tourism and stuff. And a lot of their tourism, unfortunately, is the sex trade. So, yeah. So goal 7 is ensure environmental sustainability, which they've really tried to do well with this because they have a ton of natural resources in their country, but they're not like utilizing them completely. So they have like systems like the Guyana Forest Committee and stuff in place to try to preserve those natural resources but still be able to use them for the economy. So last is develop global partnerships. So this is kind of a harder one for me to explain because it basically involves becoming a global country. So getting outside of themselves. And we kind of talked about that IMF and the World Bank and how they're trying to expand through that. But it's not super successful because it creates more external debt. But so the way to kind of evaluate this is a little different because it's a little more subjective instead of objective data. So so far we can say they're kind of doing okay in this one. So last, I kind of would just like to critique the goals a little bit. And one goal that I think that maybe could be critiqued a little bit is to maybe combine maternal health and reduce childhood mortality because they're so hand in hand that it seems kind of funny to put them in two different goals. Also, I think that the develop global partnerships is a little bit ambiguous just because we can't really be able to show that through objective data, and like some countries just don't have the ability to globalize because of the resources they have or the limitations they have because of the fact that they can't meet all of these other goals.
Right.
So
they're struggling to get those.
Yeah. And so one of the greatest things that I think that my country needs to improve on or like make a main priority is to ensure environmental sustainability, because they could create so much more economy by using their natural resources effectively, but also by having those things in place that will keep them from using up their natural resources. That way, obviously, they can ensure environmental sustainability, but they can also start helping eradicate poverty and hunger, and that just kind of has a domino effect on the rest of the culture and the rest of the society, because, money kind of trickles down. So
more opportunities are
more
given.
Opportunities equals more money for them. So last question I'd like to address is, what does the future hold for my country? And I think that they are really on the right track, and I think that they will be able to become a developed country in time, and that as they learn and implement these goals, then they will be able to be successful because they're already on their way.
I agree.
Yeah. So thank you for
doing this,
and thank you for listening.